I was witness to an event that was, I cannot fully explain. It was at Ariel Primary School in 1994.
There were roughly 100 kids in the playground, broad daylight, Ariel School, Rua, Zimbabwe, 1994, and they got within some of them within arm's length of these beings.
But those kids, the way they were talking about it and the way they were drawing it, you're like, wow, it really does seem like something happened to them.
I get goosebumps still to this day after spending over 6 years investigating this case. It just gives me the goosebumps when I see that, because you know those kids aren't lying.
UFO sightings have fascinated the world for a long time, but there's one so compelling, and that's the one that occurred in Zimbabwe. On an ordinary day, over 60 children and their teachers at a local school witnessed an unidentified flying object descend nearby. But what happened next defied explanation.
Jim Leach from BBC Television News in Harare, Zimbabwe. Message for Dr. John Mack. This concerns a UFO sighting over a school where it hovered, landed, a black man got out, but of course we're having difficulty being taken seriously in spite of being the BBC. Please call me as soon as you can. Thank you.
When a determined investigator arrived to uncover the truth, she found herself entangled in events far beyond what she could have imagined.
We saw this like a silver thing down there. It was a silver oval thing that flew past really slowly.
I saw the bigger one and a spaceship, like 4 or 5 of them. It was red, green and yellow.
There was this big ship. It had these lights, these patterns, and it flew.
We saw this black figure running in slow motion.
The strange thing was it seemed to be in very slow motion.
Sitting on the spaceship.
How do you know it was a spaceship? Wasn't it a helicopter or something like that?
Well, it looked like it was like a disc, like a round.
And whereabouts was it?
It was in the trees over there, between the third pole.
And did you girls see that as well?
Yes.
I agree that it could be something that we are not common with.
Big head and big black eyes, and was dressed in a black bodysuit.
Ariel School, UFO landing. On the morning of the 16th of September, 1994, during a warm, clear recess at the Ariel School in Rua, just 22 kilometers outside Harare, something extraordinary happened. About 60 students aged roughly 6 to 12 were out on their mid-morning break, while the teachers were holding a staff meeting indoors. As recess progressed, many children looked toward the boundary of the schoolyard and described seeing a silver-colored craft descend or land in the brush just beyond the fence. The object was round, shining, and very clearly present outside the playground area. To make it even more shocking, once the craft landed, small beings actually emerged from it. According to all the witnesses, the figures that came out were about a meter tall, clad in black or dark bodysuits, or appearing with black skin, with large, entrancing eyes that dominated their faces. Some of the older children stayed closer to the fence and watched as the figures came towards them. One student remembered the strange movement. Instead of walking in a normal human way, the being seemed to move by hopping or gliding. It was clear that they were not humans. According to many of the young witnesses, there was an overwhelming moment of connection. The large eyes of the beings caused the children to stare even more, and in that moment, something changed. One girl said she felt like the being was looking into her soul. The aliens didn't speak any words, but some of the children said that they received telepathic communication. As the aliens stared at them, they actually saw visions of environmental catastrophe and could understand more about humankind's relationship with the planet. The event only lasted for about 15 minutes, and then it ended as quickly as it began. Some children said that the aircraft vanished right in front, while others said that it lifted off or simply disappeared from where it landed. The bell rang for the end of recess, and the children went back to class, but they were shaken and silent. What makes this moment even so vivid is how the children didn't only describe what they saw, but also what they felt. One witness said that when the being looked at her, everything around her just disappeared. Another child remembered the craft glinting among the trees and that it looked like a round disc. When the children revealed what they saw, the principal asked them to draw it. Surprisingly, all their drawings bore striking resemblances. They drew bright silhouettes of metallic craft, small figures nearby, and wide black eyes and dark bodies. The immediate reaction when the children saw the UFO was to scream and run to the tuck shop. Of course, not every student saw the same thing in the same way, but the core image remains. They all saw a silver craft, small dark-skinned or dressed beings with big eyes, and a moment where they were frozen in wonder and fear. As you can expect, once the UFO sighting happened at Ariel School, it immediately attracted a lot of investigators and experts who wanted to find out more about what happened. Did these children really see aliens and UFOs, or is there more to the story? Investigations and findings. After the children returned to their classrooms, they were shaken and excited, and the significance of the event started to unfold. The teachers soon realized that this was not just another playground story. The school's headmaster instructed each student who claimed to have seen something to draw what they had observed and to write an account of it. The next day, concerned parents arrived at the school, searching the grounds and asking what had frightened their children so deeply. The schoolyard, which was just beyond the playground fence, became the focus of this anxious parental scrutiny. Meanwhile, information about the incident spread quickly. The local radio channels and media started to pick up the story, and before they knew it, external investigators entered the scene. One of the first outside researchers to interview the children was Cynthia Hind, a UFO investigator. She visited the school just a few days after the incident and collected multiple drawings and verbal descriptions from the students. What she found noteworthy was that children of different ages and backgrounds described remarkably similar elements, like the silvery craft, dark-clad beings with large black eyes, and a sense of dread or awe, even if their narratives had some differences. The fact that there were similarities despite cultural and age variations among the witnesses made the evidence stronger. Some children thought that the beings were part of local folklore, seeing them as tikaloshas or spirits instead of extraterrestrials. That was because the children came from relatively rural backgrounds and had limited exposure to UFO imagery, so they didn't know about aliens. Still, the drawings and wordings were similar to what's expected from alien or UFO sightings. After that, the renowned psychiatrist and author John E. Mack from Harvard visited the site. In his interviews with many of the children, he reported emergent themes. The children all said that they got telepathic messages about environmental destruction, warnings about humanity's misuse of technology, and a sense that something unreal had happened.
Again, the whole thing has made me re-examine all of these notions of happen, didn't happen. For them, it is completely real, and it is not the product of mental illness. Now, whether it happened altogether in this reality, I don't know. But it shows up in their world. They're seen to be missing by witnesses at the time, so something is occurring that is entering our world.
Mack also added the fact that all the children seemed to be coherent, emotionally grounded, and genuinely troubled. They weren't hysterical or imaginative, and it didn't seem like they were lying together or under drugs. But there were some complications. While the children agreed on the core elements, there were some differences in the narratives. Some children saw the craft and not the beings. Others saw the beings and not the craft. The physical descriptions also varied, although this is expected for witnesses. The drawings likewise varied in detail. Though many depicted a saucer or disc-shaped object and small figures with big eyes, other drawings included stripes, platforms, windows, or completely different configurations. Even if there were many witnesses and the interviews were done immediately after the sighting, there's still no universally acceptable evidence. There was no radioactive residue or material fragment. Interviewers examined the bush beyond the playground, but the results were inconclusive. Also, the psychological impact on many of the children was obvious. Some of them underwent counseling, others said they had recurring dreams, and others even changed their outlook on life regardless of how young they were. Over time, the case became internationally known, featured in media reports and documentaries. A film titled Ariel Phenomenon was developed to revisit the incident with archival material and interviews of the original witnesses, now adults. Mac's death in 2004 meant that his full intended report into the incident was never published, leaving the case in a kind of limbo. But the question now is, when they filmed the UFO that landed in Zimbabwe, was it true or false? There are many factors that make this sighting a credible one. What makes it credible? For one, there were a lot of independent witnesses. Over 60 children aged between 6 and 12 saw the event during recess at the Ariel School. The diversity of the student body also adds weight, as many of the children came from different backgrounds, but they all described similar experiences. What's more, the consistency of key elements across all the witness accounts. Many saw a silver or glinting craft that was disc-shaped, while others saw figures about a meter tall, with large black eyes, wearing dark suits or being dark-clad, emerging from the craft. Even the drawings that were produced by the children shortly after the event show notable similarities, like the craft, the figures, and the field beyond the fence. What's more, the environment of the sighting makes it even more credible. The children were outdoors during recess, with minimal adult supervision, as the teachers were in a meeting, so they were unsupervised, yet organized into a group. And that reduces the chances of a coordinated hoax by teachers. Also, cultural factors matter. Proponents argue many children had little exposure to UFO imagery or popular media at the time, especially given the rural setting, meaning their descriptions were less likely to be borrowed from sci-fi movies. Finally, you have to look at the reaction of the children themselves. Many reports show that they were genuinely frightened. Some of them were traumatized and didn't even want to go back to the playground. So, when you look at the number of witnesses, independent accounts, consistency across drawings and testimonies, and the emotional impact, many researchers say that this is probably one of the strongest mass UFO sighting events ever. That doesn't mean there aren't some criticisms, as there are many critics that don't believe this ever happened. Some critics say that, although there were many children, no adult or independent adult witness saw it. After all, if something as dramatic as a landing craft and humanoid appeared, why didn't any adult see it or report it? Also, the initial investigator had interviewed the children in small groups, about 4 to 6 children together instead of individually, and that has raised the possibility that the children influenced each other during their testimonies. Later, when Mac arrived, it was months after the event, and so some critics say that they might have influenced each other over the years. Not to mention that not all children in the playground claimed to see the craft and beings. Some of them saw absolutely nothing, and for those who saw something, the details vary. Some said the beings had hair, others said they were bald, and some saw the landing, while others said the spaceship only hovered. Even their drawings were slightly different. Some say that if something concrete and dramatic happened, one should expect more uniformity in descriptions. Even if the children were in a rural area, someday they might still have been influenced by media, myth, or folklore. That's because, around that time, the area was experiencing a lot of attention after a rocket re-entry produced a fireball in the sky. So, some critics argue that the experience could be explained by mass hysteria. One child or a small group sees something odd, tells his peers, and before they know it, the story spreads. And let's not forget the fact that there's no physical evidence like a landing mark, wreckage, photographs of the craft, or any other data aside from what the children said. After all, with the craft landing or hovering close by, one expects there to be some trace on the trees or field. What's more, the messages children reported, telepathic communication about environmental danger, technology misuse, etc., match thematic elements that were popular in UFO and New Age discourse at the time. Some also question whether the investigators' expectations for the children shaped their narrative. Interestingly, before Cynthia Hind went to Ariel to investigate what the children had seen, she was already investigating another strange sighting that many people now suspect is connected. UFO Cynthia Hind.
Hundreds of people today phoned the ZBC and the BBC correspondent in Harare saying they sighted an unidentified flying object last night. We have some eyewitness reports.
It was a bright, radiant light. I've never seen anything like it in my life. It was the absence of noise I didn't like.
On the evening of the 14th of September 1994, many residents in Zimbabwe were jolted by an abrupt, loud noise. Some said it was an explosion or sonic boom, while others thought it was something extraterrestrial. It caused windows to rattle and doors to shake across a wide area. In the days surrounding that event, multiple witnesses reported seeing strange lights in the night sky.
These things were flying in a pattern, and there was no sound. No wings, no nothing. Shiny over thing.
This was especially near Lake Kariba, where observers described long, bright sausages or streaks of light moving slowly and erratically, unlike typical meteors, which moved first north to south, then east to southwest. At first, it seemed like there was a standard explanation for this. According to the satellite re-entries, the Russian satellite Cosmos 2292nd stage re-entered the atmosphere around the 14th of September 1994, with observed sightings in Botswana, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. Cynthia Hind collected hundreds of witness reports. Although the official statements suggested that it was a meteor or meteorite breakup that caused the boom and lights, Hind was still skeptical because the movement and behavior of the lights seemed to be inconsistent with meteors. The combination of the loud acoustic event and the prolonged aerial display triggered interest in UFO research. But it became even more suspicious when, 2 days later, a detailed mass sighting happened near Ariel School in Rua, where over 60 children witnessed a landed craft. Many experts say that these aerial events were a kind of prelude or reconnaissance for whatever was seen at Ariel School 2 days later. UFO crash Australia. Aside from in Zimbabwe, something similar happened in Australia, where a UFO also went close to a school and was witnessed by over 200 students and teachers. This was a much bigger scale than with the Ariel School sighting. In the late morning of April 6, 1966, many years before the little children in Zimbabwe spotted aliens and a spacecraft, at the then Westall High School in the Melbourne suburb of Clayton South, a seemingly ordinary recess transformed into one of Australia's most enduring mysteries. It happened around 11 a.m., when students were scattered across the oval in clear autumn skies, and a girl burst into a Year 9 science class shouting that a flying saucer was outside. In the moments that followed, over 200 students and several teachers ran outside, and they saw something surreal. They could see a silver-gray, disc-shaped craft that was about twice the size of a family car, with a domed top and a slight purple hue in some descriptions. The object hovered, moved slowly and then more rapidly, and seemed almost matter-of-factly to descend behind a stand of pine trees and into a nearby open paddock known as the Grange Reserve. They said that the craft was very close to the ground, and many children scaled the fences and sprinted toward the field. Some described seeing a distinct circle of flattened or boiled grass, or even multiple circles, in the clearing where the object had crashed. Then, after about 20 minutes, the craft shot upward at incredible speed and vanished. Some witnesses also said that they saw 5 light aircraft chasing it. In the aftermath, the school quickly held a special assembly in which the staff advised students not to talk about what they had seen. Witnesses remember the men in uniform closing off the area, and soil samples were taken from the landing site. The Westall event stands out not only for the quantity of credible witnesses like school children, teachers, and local residents, but also for the dramatic nature of what they claim to have seen. A craft that hovered, landed, and departed, all in broad daylight. Researchers have noted that this scale of mass witness account is rare in UFO lore, making it a touchstone case. This is seen as more credible because the children here are much older than those in the Ariel School case. But many years later, you won't believe that another strange sighting was spotted in Australia. In a remote section of forest in southeastern Australia, a shocking discovery has attracted the attention of UFO enthusiasts around the world. A photograph circulating widely on social media appears to show a strange, metallic craft partially buried among dense trees, and undergrowth. Observers claim the object exhibits features unlike any known human aircraft, including a smooth, seamless hull, irregular geometric shapes, and a faint iridescent glow along its surface. The origin of the craft is still a mystery. The locals who stumbled upon the site suspect that it has been there for many years, hidden from view until recent logging activity exposed it. It didn't have any visible engines or recognizable markings, and that has caused some speculation that it could be from an extraterrestrial source. Strange saucers are always expected in Australia, as in 1966, another strange sighting was spotted. A sugarcane farmer in Tule revealed that he saw a saucer rise from a swamp area. It was almost like the UFO had landed and was now leaving. To make it sound real, investigators discovered a circular, flattened area of reed or grass, which seemed to be a saucer nest. Many say that this might count as physical trace evidence. And then, in 1978, a pilot named Frederick Valentic disappeared while flying a Cessna over Bass Strait. Before he disappeared, he said that there was an unidentified object above his plane. The case remains unresolved, and many suspect that it was an alien spaceship or craft that captured his plane along with him and took him away, never to be seen again. Do you think this was just a widespread hoax, or is this something that really happened? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Australia UFO crash.
Your home and car insurance before July 6. You'll get a bonus 20% off your home insurance. Stop paying too much. Call Apia on 135050 and save today.
Offer valid for the first year only, not available online. T's and C's apply. APA is an authorised rep of AAI Limited, the product issuer. Consider the PDS before buying and whether it's right for you. By the way, I'm with you on the berries.
On the morning of May 28, 2018, a quiet stretch of forest in rural Australia became the centre of a mystery that has since captivated both locals and international audiences. According to the now circulating footage, a strange metallic object was discovered deep within the tree line shortly after residents heard an explosive crack echo across the valley. Those who arrived first described an acrid smell in the air and an unusual electronic hum drifting through the stillness, as if the forest itself had been momentarily interrupted by something not meant to be there. The video opened with the camera showing a strange object that had greatly depressed the ground where it landed. It was a smooth, curved structure that was nothing like any known aircraft, sitting embedded in the ground. The object seems to be intact yet out of place, and the surface was reflecting the dim morning light. There were no scorch marks from an explosion, no debris field, and no indication of conventional impact trauma. The object seemed placed and not crashed, and it looked like it had been there for a long time, covered in dust and cobwebs, except that no one ever noticed it. The object looked like a strange type of plane, with a round ball in the front, curved wings, and nothing like anything that had ever been seen as a human-made craft. After inspecting the strange UFO, they realized that it didn't have many of the features that are expected from a human craft. It had no standard wings, exhaust, or any other feature that made it look like a proper plane. As experts looked into the UFO, they described a sensation of being watched, despite seeing no movement or openings on the craft. Others claimed that wildlife in the area behaved unusually. The birds fell silent, and kangaroos, normally active at that hour, held a distance from the strange object. Local authorities responded within the hour when the UFO was spotted, although when they came, they only brought more questions than answers. Rather than approaching the site with investigative curiosity, officers established a perimeter and asked everyone to leave the area immediately. By midday, unmarked vehicles and personnel had taken over the scene. The object was covered, removed, and transported away under heavy protection. Till now, there's no public statement about what the craft might have been. Also in Australia, another UFO sighting happened near a school that would remind you of what was seen in Zimbabwe. It's almost like these UFOs keep going near schools. Westall UFO incident.
In this case,
with a domed top and smooth, unmarked surface. At first, the object hovered high, this time in the UK. Although it was spotted by children, some adults also reported seeing it. Broadhaven UFO sighting.
My friend Philip here was trying to find a way over the stream, and I was looking at the bushes up the top of the trees. And then suddenly this silver cigar-shaped object seemed to pop up from behind the bushes and trying to take off. Then it disappeared again.
Well, I saw the spaceship. I didn't see the man. The spaceship, it looked a cigar shape with a dome on it. And it had a yellowy, orange to red light on the top of it.
In the crisp February air of 1977, a group of children at Broadhaven Primary School in the sleepy Welsh village of Broadhaven bore witness to something extraordinary.
How clearly did you see it?
Well, I couldn't see its face because it was too far away.
Oh, you say you saw a man as well, did you?
Yes.
And what about him?
Well, he was too far away to be seen as well.
Are you sure it wasn't perhaps just a helicopter or an aircraft from the airfield near here?
A helicopter could land there, but that's private property over there. And if they landed there, they could be prosecuted. And with an aircraft, the only thing that could get in there was a Harrier.
Were you frightened at the time?
Yes.
Why?
Well, I thought there would be a whole army inside there or something.
It was lunch break on February 4th, when a handful of boys, aged about 9 to 11, claimed they saw a cigar-shaped object descend into the field beyond their playground. According to their testimonies, the object was silver or yellow-silver, with a dome in its middle third and a row of windows along its length. There was also a red light on the craft, signaling its power or status, which pulsed gently on the top. Some of the children didn't just see the craft. They saw a figure emerge, which was humanoid in form and clad in a silver suit, although its features remained fuzzy from where they stood. One of the boys recalled saying, "It wasn't a very tall person, and he didn't look very nice either." They felt shock, fear, and fascination as they ran back to the school building, breathless and wide-eyed. Their stories stirred disbelief, and everyone was confused until the headmaster stepped in. He separated the children and handed out paper and pencils, asking each one to draw what they had seen. Despite the chaos and emotion, The resulting sketches looked very similar to each other. That was only the beginning. Over the following weeks, more witnesses emerged, and it wasn't only children. On 17 February, a teacher and several school canteen staff reported seeing the same kind of object hovering near the school field. One said that it was a silvery yellow cigar-shaped craft with a dome, and they also said they saw a figure emerge before the object glided away. But it wasn't only the school, as the local community found themselves at the center of something strange. Local residents outside the immediate school community soon joined the chorus. Hotel owners, farmers, and evening walkers said they saw strange beings, uncanny lights, or odd craft moving silently across the sky. To this day, many of those original children, now adults, continue to insist that something real was out there, and it was beyond their world. A few years before this, something shocking was happening in other schools around the world, like in New Zealand, which had an even bigger number of witnesses. Crest View Elementary UFO. On the clear spring morning of April 7, 1967, students at Crest View Elementary in Opa-locka, Florida, found their recess abruptly turned into something unforgettable. As roughly 200 children spilled into the schoolyard, their laughter and games stilled, replaced by pointing fingers and startled cries. Peering toward a tree-dotted field behind the school, several saw a strange, oval-shaped object hovering just above the pines, and they weren't imagining it. Among the first to notice was a teacher, later joined by colleagues, who confirmed what the children saw. The silent, metallic craft lingered in the sky for a few intense minutes, shimmering strangely under the Florida sun. Students who had paused their play stared upward in astonishment as the object drifted toward the school, dipped behind a pine tree, then reappeared and moved westward. One teacher reportedly summed it up plainly. It was a flying saucer. The sighting didn't end there. Kids described more than one object, some cigar-shaped. A quieter observer among them said the larger craft seemed almost like a floating ship, its metallic body bright yet enigmatic. Accounts from the day mention children running toward fences, pointing and shouting, some in shock, others in awe. Several later rode their bikes to the field behind the school, hoping to spot what they'd seen. They claimed to find flattened grass and scorched-looking patches, as though something heavy had rested there or intense energy had touched the ground. The shock wasn't limited to students. Adults outside the school, neighbors, and local residents reported seeing strange oval objects with red lights hovering just over the treetops in the direction of the school that same day. When they filmed a UFO in Zimbabwe, they couldn't believe what happened. It wasn't just a UFO, but aliens stepped out, showing them something that they didn't realize. Which of these UFO sightings near the schools do you think is the most valid? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. So, thanks for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one. For most people, alien abduction belongs to the realm of science fiction, but sometimes a story emerges that seems so real, even seasoned investigators cannot explain this.
We pulled up and I noticed there was posted signs there, and I said, Charlie, you know, maybe we don't need to go fishing here. He said, no, that's fine. And that's when I noticed some blue hazy lights reflecting coming across from my back, out across the water. So I stood up thinking that I was going to go to jail.
Among these rare accounts, the experience of Carl Higdon stands out. He was a quiet Wyoming hunter whose encounter defies everything we've thought we knew about this world. But around that time, others reported similar impossible events. Carl Higdon alien abduction story. Let's go back to late October 1974, when 40-year-old Carl Higdon, an oil driller from Wyoming, took the afternoon off to go elk hunting in the remote foothills of the Medicine Bow National Forest. What begins as a routine outing quickly becomes a story that you won't even expect. Carl's day followed a familiar pattern. He drove into the forest, parked his pickup, and headed quickly into the clearing. There, he spotted 5 elk standing motionless. He raised his new 7mm Magnum, squeezed the trigger, and nothing happened like he expected. He was shocked to realize that the rifle didn't make any sounds. The recoil was absent, and the bullet seemed to exit the barrel in slow motion. It traveled only about 50 feet before dropping into the snow. Even the forest felt eerily muted. That's when he noticed something surprising. There was a large, transparent, cube-shaped object, empty and hovering on the ground nearby. And approaching him, by gliding rather than walking, was a humanoid figure. It was about 6 feet, 2 inches tall, dressed in a black scuba-like suit, with straw-colored hair standing up in bunches, and antennae like rods on its head. It was nothing like he had ever seen before, and no one else has probably seen it. The being didn't have a chin or ears, but small, slanted ears. The being asked him telepathically, "Are you hungry?" It offered floating pills in a packet. Carl took it and swallowed it, but he felt like he was compelled because he wouldn't normally take such a thing. Then the being identified itself as Also One and invited Carl to come aboard the transparent craft. One moment, he's standing in the forest. The next, he finds himself in a seat inside that cube, restrained, seeing his own pickup truck far below. The elk that were once in the clearing also appeared in the cage. Also One explained that they came from a world many light miles away, hunting animals and fish for food pills. Inside the craft, Carl was floating, and it seemed like he was traveling through space. It showed humans in a relaxed company under a tower of lights. Then came a chilling message. Also On actually told him, "You're not what we want. We'll take you back." And before he knew it, he was back on the side of a hill, hurting his shoulder and looking confused. When Carl returned, the search party found his truck 3 miles away from where he parked it. It was stuck in deep mud, with no tracks leading up to it. It was as if the vehicle had simply materialized. He was in a state of amnesia and couldn't recognize his wife. All he did was mutter words like, "They took my elk," and speak of floating pills and a strange being. They had to take him for medical tests, and experts were shocked at what they found. The previous lung scar tissue was gone, and his kidney stones, which had been there for a long time, simply disappeared. But despite his state of disarray, they didn't find any symptoms of a mental illness. It was clear that he was simply shaken off. He later calmed down and revealed the story of what he had witnessed and experienced. But that was not all for Carl. In the years that followed, he remained in telepathic contact with Also One, experiencing strange lights following him, and even sensed that he was being monitored. Even worse, his case was connected to missing persons cases which had been found in remote areas, and so many started to wonder whether those people were also abducted by aliens but couldn't expose the story. There was a lot of credibility to Carl Higdon's story. It had a witness who was sober and an outdoorsman, physical traces like the malformed bullet, and the truck which was found in a completely different way, and medical reports that scientists couldn't understand. Many began to wonder, if this man returned, how many didn't? This is one of the most convincing alien abduction stories out there. But he's not the only one to have this shocking experience. Travis Walton, another credible witness, was abducted for 5 days, and the evidence was overwhelming. Travis Walton. On the evening of November 5, 1975, in Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona, something shocking happened that changed the history of ufology. A logging crew of 7 men, after a long day at work, were driving back through the trees when a golden disc-shaped craft appeared. It hovered just 20 feet off the ground ahead of them. The craft would change one of the men's lives forever. Travis Walton, then 22, got out of the truck to examine what was in front of them. His co-workers could only watch in horror as a beam of bluish-green light shot from the craft and struck him in the chest. In Walton's own words, "All I felt was the numbing force of a blow that felt like a high-voltage electrocution. My mind sank quickly into unfeeling blackness." The men fled the scene in panic, assuming the beam had killed their friend. When they returned minutes later, the craft had instantly vanished. And to their surprise, so had Travis. Immediately, the co-workers contacted the police, and what followed was an intensive search, media attention, and mounting suspicion of foul play. Even his co-workers were investigated for murder. But 5 days later, they didn't believe what would happen. Travis literally appeared by a roadside near Heber, Arizona, shocked and claiming that he couldn't remember a lot of things. He said he had awakened inside the craft, where short beings and strange human-looking figures actually studied him. He remembered a Spartan room, a plastic mask placed over his face, and moments of unconsciousness. Time and again, Travis has maintained he wasn't abducted literally in the sense of confinement, but rather he was rescued. He believes he was mortally wounded by the beam, and these beings intervened to save him. What makes the Walton case even more dramatic yet credible is how many eyewitnesses and documents that were there. His 6 co-workers all tell the same story. They took polygraph tests, and there are records of the initial missing person investigation. But some skeptics say that there are some inconsistencies. One crew member confessed in a recorded phone call to participating in a hoax, although he later retracted it. Over the decades, Walton's has remained an important part of UFO lore. Walton himself admits that after 50 years of recounting the events, he's tired of being asked to prove it. He also said that if 7 people testified to a normal crime, people would believe it. But he is facing a lot of scrutiny because of the UFO claim despite all the evidence and witnesses. The abduction of Travis Walton remains one of the most documented and convincing alien abductions out there. But a few years after this happened, another alien abduction happened, this time with over 20 witnesses. Linda Napolitano.
I tried to wake my husband. Eyes still closed, and there was no response from my husband. And that's when I did open my eyes and I looked straight ahead. And there was this thing, this creature, standing at the foot of my bed. And it was the first time I had ever seen that consciously. I was awake. I hadn't gone to sleep yet. I was saying my prayers. So by this time, my legs were numb. And I sat up in bed, dragging my heavy legs with me, and turned up behind me and threw a pillow, big pillow, that I made. You would think that I stuffed them with rocks because it was heavy. And I hit him too, that creature. And my next conscious memory, fragmented memory, was seeing white fabric flow up and over my eyes and then down again. And then I felt something, perhaps little fists or maybe an instrument, pounding on my back. And that was all I remembered. And then my next conscious memory was that of falling into my bed. I could have fallen anywhere from 2 inches up or 2 feet up or whatever, but I was conscious and I felt myself fall into bed.
On the night of the 30th of November, 1989, in a quiet 12th floor apartment in Lower Manhattan, something shocking happened that left many scientists and ufologists surprised. Linda Napolitano, at home with her husband, woke up to something unsettling. she revealed that 3 non-human beings suddenly appeared before her. She says that they levitated her out of the window, up and over the city skyline, and into a craft floating above near the Brooklyn Bridge. The scene showed a beam of blue-white light, her body suspended in midair, and the concrete and glass cityscape beneath her. Once aboard the craft, Linda revealed that she endured a series of experiments that were chilling in their clinical nature. She said that the small gray beings and some human-looking observers probed her body, inserted instruments like a device in her nostril, and used telepathy and strange languages. Afterwards, she woke up in her bed, next to her husband, and she had no memory of how long she had been missing. But she discovered something shocking. There was a lump in her nose, pain, and odd sensations. An X-ray reportedly showed a foreign object, which later vanished when a specialist tried to remove it. This left only a ridge of cartilage in her nose. You might think it's unbelievable if you only have Linda's testimony, but she's not the only one that saw it. The alien abduction had around 20-plus eyewitnesses, including drivers, pedestrians, night workers near the bridge, and even security officers. Her key investigator, Bud Hopkins, revealed that 2 bodyguards passing by at that time had seen the levitation when she was lifted out of her house through the window, and wrote letters describing it. One of the men even claimed that the person they guarded, former Javier Perez de Cuellar, also saw the event. The fact that many people saw her being levitated makes the case stand out from normal abduction stories, but the story later became tangled in doubt. The witnesses were never publicly identified, and the influential figure, Perez de Cuellar, officially denied any involvement. It seemed more like they realized how significant the situation was and quickly had to cover it up. Skeptics also say that many of the letters were signed by Linda herself, and some handwriting experts said that the letters were copied. In 2024, Netflix released a 3-part docuseries titled The Manhattan Alien Abduction, which reopened the case to a new audience. Linda felt the series portrayed her unfairly and sued Netflix for defamation, claiming the editing made her look dishonest and misrepresented the narrative she agreed to share. She alleges that producers promised a sympathetic portrayal, but delivered something else. Whether you believe in aliens or not, Linda Napolitano's story remains one of the most convincing alien abduction claims, with many witnesses. After all, it would have been hard to miss a woman being levitated above Manhattan, floating in the city's skyline. Frederick Valentic. On the evening of 21st October, 1978, 20-year-old pilot Frederick Valentic departed from Moorabbin Airport in Victoria, Australia, flying a single-engine Cessna 182L toward King Island across the Bass Strait. His plan was routine, but what followed has become one of the most haunting mysteries of aviation history. Less than an hour into his flight, while over the sea at around 4,500 feet, Valentic contacted Melbourne Flight Service. He asked if any other aircraft were in his vicinity. He was told none were reported. Moments later, he described a strange aerial object. He said, "It seems to be orbiting on top of me. It's got a green light, and it's all shiny on the outside." It seemed like nothing at first, but there came the most chilling words, as he also said, "That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. It's hovering, and it's not an aircraft." A moment later, the radio open mic transmitted a metallic scraping noise for about 17 seconds, and then silence. Neither Valentic nor his plane were ever found, despite all the search efforts. As the hours passed, surface ships and aircraft, including the Royal Australian Air Force's P-3 Orion, swept the waters and coastlines around Cape Otway and King Island. Yet no wreckage, life vests, or hint of the aircraft ever emerged. Betty and Barney Hill Incident. On the night of September 19th to 20th, 1961, Betty and Barney Hill, a mild-mannered interracial couple driving through rural New Hampshire, encountered something that would change their lives and reshape UFO lore. While returning from a vacation, they noticed a bright object in the sky that behaved unlike any plane or satellite. What she first thought was a falling star moving upward, altered direction, and eventually hovered low above their car. Barney stepped out with binoculars and his pistol in his pocket and watched a large, flat, pancake-shaped craft appear overhead. Through his binoculars, he claimed to see 8 to 11 humanoid figures peering out of the windows. One of the figures remained and uttered a telepathic message that said, "Stay where you are and keep looking." Terrified, Barney ran back to the car, and they sped away. Moments later, they heard rhythmic beeps, felt their vehicle vibrate, and a tingling sensation pass through their bodies. Then their memory went black. They realized they had traveled some 35 miles, but they couldn't remember anything. Once home, the strange aftermath continued. Betty found her dress torn and stained with a pink powder. Barney's shoes were scuffed deeply. Their watches stopped working. Haunted by vivid dreams and strange impulses, they eventually sought help from psychiatrist Dr. Benjamin Simon, who, under hypnosis, guided them to recall being taken aboard a spacecraft, separated and examined by non-human beings. Pascagoula Incident. On the night of 11 October 1973, 2 shipyard workers, Charles Hickson, who was 42, and Calvin Parker Jr. at age 19, went for a quiet fishing trip on a pier at the bank of the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. The air was still, the water dark, and it should have been an ordinary evening. But seconds after a strange whirring noise and the appearance of 2 blinking blue lights, they say their lives were changed forever. Hickson saw a large oval-shaped metallic craft hovering a few feet above the water. Meanwhile, Parker was paralyzed, and although he was aware, he couldn't move. Then 3 creatures emerged. They were about 5 feet tall, with grayish skin, no visible necks, slits for mouths, and peculiar pointed protrusions from where ears and noses would be. They say they were taken aboard the craft, examined in what felt like an alien medical chamber, and then returned to the same pier from which they'd been taken just minutes later in their own time. The local sheriff's office took the report seriously. Hickson and Parker passed polygraph tests and were recorded in the sheriff's station, apparently sincere and deeply shaken rather than seeking publicity. As the story spread, the city of Pascagoula later even installed a historical marker at the site of the alleged abduction, calling it one of the best documented of its kind. But, as you can expect, many people don't believe this because there was no wreckage or independent witnesses, and say it might be a misinterpretation or hallucination. Zanfretta UFO Incident. Finally, there was another shocking alien abduction which happened in 1978. On a cold December evening, night watchman Pier Fortunato Zanfretta was doing his routine rounds in the hills near Torriglia, Italy, when nothing was ordinary. At around 11:30 p.m. on December 6th, he noticed strange lights dancing around a villa known as Casa Nostra. Convinced at first he was dealing with burglars, he stepped out of his patrol car and instead found himself face to face with something utterly different. Through the radio, he described that he could see a massive red oval craft resting in a garden, then colossal beings who were up to 3 meters tall, with mottled green skin, triangular yellow eyes, and claw-like feet came out. His radio crackled with his panicked cry as he said, "No, they're not men. They are not men." Shortly after, his colleagues found him disoriented, uniform torn, body unnaturally warm despite freezing night air. At the scene, investigators noted a semicircular impression in the grass, as if something heavy had landed. Over the next few years, Zanfretta claimed 11 separate abductions by the same beings which he called Dargos. They had allegedly told him they came from a dying planet in a far-off galaxy and were evaluating Earth for habitation. Under hypnosis, he described vivid aboard-ship scenes, cold medical instruments, a helmet placed on his head, strange lights, floating objects, and telepathic communication. The case drew major attention due to all the evidence and witness statements. The lights were seen that night by villagers, and Zanfretta's statements remain consistent. These convincing alien abduction stories remind you that there's something stranger and more interesting out there. Which of these do you think is the most convincing? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. So, thanks for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.